Good morning, students. Today I am going to take your first chapter of political science, the Indian constitutions. You know, this Indian, before start the chapter, you know that it's very much important to know about the constitutions. Constitutions need each and every country. Okay, so these constitutions need for the rules and regulations, guidelines. Okay, and this constitution even need to make the rules and regulations for the country. So you know that in our country the constitutions adopted in 1949 26 November, but it is came on effect in 1950 26 January as we celebrate Republic Day. Okay na. And in this day the Indian country started to make the rules and regulation for the country and for the citizens. And we know without a rules and regulation the country cannot run in a peace way. Okay, so let's start our first chapter, the Indian constitutions. So the very first chapter talks about the Indian constitutions. Now before we start, let's understanding what is constitutions. It's very much important to know the definition of the constitutions. So I will start with an example. Okay, so I request all the students to listen carefully, and after the chapter you go through your book, means go through your chapters line by line. Okay, this chapter. So let's understand why there is need to study constitution, or why need to frame a constitutions actually came into be. Now if we talk about any game, what type of game? So let's talk about football. And if I play football with hand, will it be okay? It won't be, because the rules of the game explain that if you catch the ball by hand, it would consider as a fall. Similarly, you are going to school. Okay, you have to be there in a school dress. If you writing the exam, you have answer of those questions that have been asked in the question paper. You cannot take any questions and write any answer that you want. So those are certain rules have been defined certain things. Similarly, for a country which as big as India or any other nations, when we talk about, there is a requirement for the rules to be formulated. It's very much important. Okay, and these rules are framed in the country. We can either write those, or we can just take them as oral rules. So if we write those, that is known as constitutions. Okay, what basically a constitution does as constitution does as it guarantees as, it explains as what is right and what is wrong. So it helps us to demonstrate and understand what we should do and what are the things that we must follow. Now there are two statesmen here, and these are really critical. So all democratic nations have a constitutions. That's the first statement that correct, but this is not implies that all nations which have a constitutions must be democratic. There could be some nations which have a constitutions but are not democratic, but all the democratic nations of the world will definitely have a constitutions. So there is something a key points and a key aspects that most of the students gets confused about. So we very particular about this statement. Now coming on the point of designing the Indian constitutions. Now there were kind of British revolt that were taking place, and there were internal mutinies. Okay, that were going on. Mutinies, you know that how this Mangal Pandey mutinied against the Britishes. Means अगर हम हिंदी में बोलने जाए तो इसमें ऐसा होगा कि कोई मतलब मान लो कि मैं जिसके अंडर में काम करता हूँ, जिस लीडर के अंडर में काम करता हूँ, उस लीडर के अगेंस्ट मैं मतलब मैं जब विद्रोह कर दूंगा, मतलब जब रिवॉल्ट कर दूंगा, हाँ, उनके अगेंस्ट, तो वो दैट इज़ कॉल्ड द म्यूटिनीज. ओके, so despite that, there are there are rows of feeling that we must have certain rules and regulations that could be obeyed by each and every religion, caste, creed, respective of this each one. Everyone should given equal status. Even the minorities means a small person. The number of the number of groups are very less, so they are the minorities. Okay, the SC, the ST, OBC should have a representation. So all those things were kept into the mind, and therefore we had constitutions that were drafted and finally formulated. It gained momentum, okay, in December 1946, and it took 3 years, and after the 3 years more than 300 people gathered together to discuss and talks about constitutions, taking ideas from different parts of the nation, different parts of the world. Okay, so remember, 300 people gathered together to discuss and talks about constitutions. Okay, keep in mind this 300. Okay, then uh, then uh, then yes, 300 people gathered together to discuss and talks about constitutions, taking ideas from different parts of the nation, different parts of the world. So we finally drafted our constitution in November 1949. Date is 26 November, and it came into effect in January 1950. Date is 26 January, as we celebrate Republic Day. So as we said, there are certain rule and principles. Principles means, you know, that's no not the school principle. Okay, it principle means that the rules and regulations. So rule and principle which must be agreed by all people. Now let's say in a class there is numerous students. One of the students is asked to become a monitor. Okay, the story is given here. Okay, monitor. Then monitor, and he uh, gave only blames any other students in the class for not obeying and not obeying, and complains the teacher, and that student without doing anything gets a punishment from the teacher. So what could be that? It could be a kind of misuse of the power, we can say, because the child who has become the monitor of the class misusing his or her power and giving punishment to the child who is innocent is and nothing who is innocent and nothing. Similarly, you must take if dominant group is not using power against less dominant group. For example, in the class there are majorities of boys. In your class also, I think the majorities boys are means boys number are more than the girls. Okay, so in the class there are majorities of boys and few girls. The teacher decide is to work around what majority says. So that's would be a kind of by its opinion, and it's very important to check that the dominant group or majority group not using the power against the minority group. It's very much important. If in your class if in your class also, if anyone use their power means misuse their power, then you please inform the school authority. Okay, so protecting the minorities, against the very important, take whatever decisions are taken should be a kind of holistic decisions which was whole of the society, not just a few. Now now if we talk about case study of Nepal. Okay, Nepal, the case study में चलते. This is Nepal. Okay, Nepal, that's really very that's really very interesting, because till recent Nepal was a monarchy. Monarchy means, you know, huh? Monarchy means you give your answer in my comment box. Okay, monarchy. Okay, monarchy means that the king and queen rule in the country. Okay, you had a king rule. Okay, however, later on there was power state came into, and in 1990 it was the power was slowly rested with the king. However, people movement started, and finally in 2006 you had democracy that came into being. Okay, I'm talking about the Nepal. Okay, now under democracy what happens is the people choose the leader, and the leaders represent the people on their behalf. So it kinds of democratic system where the elections procedures and everything is ruled and governed by the people, and people have a clear state in the what representations. So Nepal recently changed from the monarchy to democracy, and hence the example is very important, is very important, is not important just to quote. Okay, yeah, just to quote yet, but it also important how things changed and change, and once the things changed, there is drastic changes. It would occur because now since it is what demo democratic nation, you would have a definite constitutions that Nepal government would have. So this is about the Nepal. So now come to the Indian constitutions. Okay, when we talk about Indian constitutions, let's talk about some of the key features. The first key features is B.R. Ambedkar lead the lead the he was considered as a founding father of the Indian constitutions, and his main ideas and his main ideas was to promote the scheduled caste and to help them join the government's jobs. And again, in the start of 20th century, the Indian national movement started, and this national movement laid the foundation of free India, where we talk about equality, opportunity, we talk about freedom, we talk about liberty, and so on. So you know, there's B.R. Ambedkar is also a Dalit man. Okay, na, he born one Dalit family. Okay, so that's why he worked. Okay, he worked for the lower caste people. So the idea was to provide justice to each and everyone, and to have a equal participation for each and everyone. So different communities, different culture came together, and we had few pillars on which Indian constitution's pre-foundations were laid. So the five basic pillars that we talk about, the first one is federalism. Okay, first one is federalism. Federalism means you would have the center and the state that would run simultaneously, but there would be kind of autonomy in power. Autonomy in the subjects that the nations would be dealing with, and the state would be dealing with, and a kind of mutual interactions between the two, and the healthy interactions between the two. Okay, so it's a dealing with, and the state would be dealing with, and a kind of mutual interactions between the two. Between the two means the healthy interaction. Okay, between the two means the center and the state. Okay, then we talk about forms of government. Okay, this is a parliamentary, this is a forms of government. नीचे में आ जाते हैं. Forms of government. The forms of government The forms of government under constitutions is parliamentary form of government, not the presidential form of government as a United States. So what happens in the parliamentary form of government is you have the universal adult suffrage, means the citizens have right to vote and they have right to elect their own leader. That is means the universal suffrage. Okay, so that is what is encouraged in the democracy, and we are trying to break around all kind of caste, creed and gender discrimination. So this means is the parliamentary forms of government. Third one is the separation of power. So the next is separation of power. It is a very important. Okay, let's talk about power and three hands. Okay, we are going to talk about the three hands. Okay, three hands. We talk about power and the executive, legislature and judiciary. Okay, these three are the organs of the government, and levels of the governments are central, state and local. Okay, these and these three are the organs of the government, and you know, out of these three, the judiciary having more and more power. Okay, so judiciary is simply a system of courts. So you have at state level high court, at the center level you have a supreme court and so on. So you have a legislature, that is how elected representative behave. So at the state level you have Vidhan Sabha, so the Vidhan Parishad. So at the national level you have the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. So you the elected representative that are part of the legislative. Finally is the executive body, that is responsible executing the laws and running the administration. So these are three organs of the government. Okay, so now we will see the fourth one, the fundamental rights. Now comes the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights and directive principle. There are two things. There are two things. Understand? Okay. Fundamental right mentioned under part 3 of the constitutions. Okay, 3 part of the constitution. However, directive principle, which are also known as DPSP. DPSP means what? Directive principles of state policy. Okay, DPSP are also mentioned the fourth part of the constitutions. Now in the DPSP we say that we aim we are provide we aim provide social, our aim means provide social and economic reform for the state and the state of the nations, and for a more and more benefit of the people. However, in the fundamental rights we say consensus of an Indian constitutions, and it's basically kinds of basic rights that must be provided for each and every individual. It helps us to protect from any misuse of power by the state, and it helps us, or it protects citizens against arbitrary power and absolute power, and therefore it's important. Okay, the fundamental right is very important. So remember, DPSP. This can be asked in your exam also. So last fifth point is the secularism. So you know this, our India is a secular country. Okay, different religions staying together in the country with the unity. Okay, so that's why India called a secular country. So finally, the last pillar we talk about what? Secularism. Secularism says the officially constitutions will not say that we practice so and so religions. Okay, so and so religions. Then everyone would be independent, or would have the right to practice their own religions, and therefore we say India is a secular state. The Constitution of India does not say, the Constitution of India does not says just practice Hinduism or just practice Islam. So that's not mentioned in the constitutions. and therefore we call it's a secular form of government or secularism that is prevalent. So these are the pillars of Indian constitutions that we talk about. Now coming on to fundamental rights in details. Okay, we will going to we will go details of the fundamental rights. So this is the fundamental rights. So fundamental rights has been part of the section, so we will be understand in details today. So now if you go on to any book and any magazine, you would find 6 basic fundamental rights that is given. If you look onto the constitutions of India carefully, you have various part under which constitution is divided, and under each part you have the sub part which are mentions the articles. Now their articles, these articles are amended means changes, and amendments, these meanings are same, changes means. So articles are amended by the constitutions of India. So they are amended by the majority. So you have the polling in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, and finally you have the amendments that is being passed. Now under fundamental rights, broadly we say, okay, we have right to equality, right to freedom, right to constitutional remedies, okay, then cultural and educational rights, and so on. So we have 6 fundamental rights. Talks about rights to property is no more of fundamental rights. Now under this no more of fundamental rights. Under these rights, let's say you have right to equality. Under right to equality, you would have different articles, and these different articles would cover different aspects. In the news, there were recently two privacy. Now right to privacy under article 21 is considered as a internal and intrinsic part of right to life and liberty. Now number of students got confused because if it is look onto the list of fundamental rights, we cannot find broadly right to life and personal liberty. So where it is, so it lies within right to freedom. So that's why it's very important to understand this. Under right to equality, we have different articles, and each article have the different law. So it must equal before law, no discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, place of birth. This would be opportunity in all employ system, no untouchability, and abolition of any kind title under rights to freedom, article 21. We here talk about protection of life and personal liberty and right to privacy, which was case of Puttaswamy versus Government of India. The Union of India is how said by Supreme Court. The privacy should be or is a fundamental rights. Rights, it fall under the article 21. Okay, so this article 21 is a part of the major subjects of right to freedom. Right to freedom, we talk about life and personal liberty. We talk about respect of the conviction for offenses. We talk about the freedom of speech, right to education, and protection against arrest. Right to against exploitation. Previous part was the right to privacy. Okay, na part of the right to privacy. Okay. Now next one is the right against exploitations. We talk about forced labor. We talk about the employment of child labor. Then right to freedom of religion, that the secular state that we talk about. We talk about free to propagate any religion. we are free to manage religious affairs, and the freedom as to the payment of taxes for promotions of any particular religion. So all these come under the right to freedom of religions. Next one is the cultural and educational. So under cultural and educational rights, we talk about protection of interest of minorities, talks about the rights of minorities in the educational institutions. Then the fundamental rights also talks about the saving of certain laws, as in the acquisitions of states, the validation of certain acts and the laws that are given in effect to certain directive principles. And finally, you have right to constitutional remedies, that says a person can reach to court in case he is not satisfied, or he feel that some of his rights are conquered. So remedies for the enforcement rights conferred by this part: power of the parliament to modify the restriction on rights have been conferred, and the legislation to give effect to the provisions of this part. So all these come under rights to constitutional remedies. Now, as a class 8 level, there's no requirement to remember each and every article and details, but at the higher level you would definitely require to know the article in the respective things that have been promoted under the article. So one more very important part of the chapter is the differences between government and the state. Now we say government. So government is something that has been elected after the election. So it changes after each and every elections. So we can say there is BJP government, there is UPA government, there is Congress government, then so on so forth. So government, that's something that change with elections, and it administer and enforces the law. This government is the part of state, but state cannot be exchanged with the word government, because state is the, listen carefully, because state is the political institutions that includes and represent the sovereign people. So we say the Indian state, Nepalese state, and so on so forth. So this state cannot be interchangeably the use sorry this state cannot be interchangeably use the word government. However, government is the sus suscept of subject of the state. Government is the part of state, which very important to understand the understand the differences between the state and the government. Whenever you write answers, whenever you go for with higher classes, that we talk about so this was the kind of introductions about Indian constitutions. If you have any doubts, leave comment below the comment box. And one more thing, we'll discuss the question answer afterwards, because only few questions are important from this chapter. So let's see some of the basic questions from this chapter. So you see your first page, there is no questions given in your first page. Then given the second in the sixth page, no need to write this one. Then this question you write, okay, why do the people of Nepal want a new constitutions? And this question you write on the basis of 3 marks, okay. Then here is also given some of the question. This out of these questions, no need to write anyone. Okay, and then so no need, this one also no need. No need. Okay, this one was, why was Subham happy that we not was, no need to write this one also. Array. Then here also given any question, not given. This one, discuss the differences between a state and government. This question, and after this constitution mention fundamental duties, find out with the help of teacher. No need. Then why does democratic country need a constitution? This question is required. Okay, then what, number 3, what would happen if there were no restrictions on the power of elected representatives? So you do yourself this one, try yourself. Any doubts, leave comment, and or you can ask by WhatsApp also, and I will give you the extra questions after few days. So thank you, thank you very much.